Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Resident Evil Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2. So, I gotta say, I don't quite understand why Resident Evil does what it does. Because we go on and have a video game that's like a hard R, that's like very like gross out, and it's just be like, man, this is so unique, it's so crazy. Thoroughly enjoy the games, especially when you go on to like Resident Evil 7 and go on and watch all like the crazy small stories and how like, man, this could go anywhere. And then you go on and you watch a movie, you watch a show that is to just be like, man, why can't they be anywhere close to the video games? To where it feels like an endless possibility, where when we go into a movie or when we go into a show, it feels like that endless possibility is now no longer possible within this medium. Because, man, like, this show reminds me of like the early Resident Evil movies. Like, one, it's trying to like save some budget, but then also like it just comes off very just vanilla compared to the most recent video game product. It's just like, man, give me something. Within this show, within the first two episodes, we have two different stories that are very half-baked, because of course we get a story that is set in the past that is to be just a lot of story and who cares, and eventually build up to some action, but by then I'm just like, this is wow. But then we have this future story that has a lot of action and no story, because it just has to be that way to make up for the fact that there is no action going on in the other half of the story. So it just gives us this, like, why can't you go on and tell one really good story instead of going on and trying to tell two that are obviously not complete? It doesn't make sense, and I would never want to go on to a Resident Evil product and find it relatable. Like going on and seeing like, oh, somebody's getting bullied in this show? Hashtag relatable. Why would I want to relate to any of these characters? Like, it's supposed to be in such an absurd kind of world that like you should not go and find common ground. But it is what it is, I guess. Like I don't get it. I don't get this show quite yet. If people are interested, I'll go on and I'll keep watching it, keep reviewing it. But for me, for the most point, like, this kind of just felt like certain stuff that I've already seen and didn't enjoy, and so I'm just like, man, am I seriously gonna want to go on and watch more of this? I don't know. We'll figure it out. So, with that said, let's go on into the teeing up of this. So, we have both Billy and Jade, with, of course, their father, who is Albert, who are going into New Raccoon City. And so Albert, of course, is to be working with the Umbrella Corporation, and he is a very high guy working with them. And so Albert is to kind of push the fact that he is an important guy compared to anyone else. And within these two episodes, Albert is to use his power to his advantage and creates an interesting part of this story, even though vanilla. So we also have a future Jade, and she, of course, is going on and doing these tests with these rabbits and blood to try and go on and understand these T-virus people, these zombies, and trying to analyze them. And then all of a sudden, while Jade is to be doing this experiment, she accidentally is to cut herself. And so Jade, now realizing she is bleeding, is to run off to avoid all of these zombies that are coming at her. But then Jade is to find herself within a cluster of these kind of freedom fighters. And so she gets stuck with them and realizes that the Umbrella Corporation are looking for her, and eventually things unfold while that happens. Probably most of what I'm already saying here feels like I spoiled these first 2 episodes because there isn't much going on. Especially in the action department. When we actually get to the future episodes, it feels like I just spoiled everything. So, because really this story has to be carried by the past story, because we have nothing else really going on. So, man, is that great. The vanilla part of the show is the thing that has to carry this show along for 2 episodes. Man, is that brilliant. Man, Resident Evil and Netflix just putting this together, giving us just a mediocre show. So let's go on into that double 5 time territory. It's about that time to just go on into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil the show. So yeah, right now currently this show is just, I would much rather go on and watch a number of Resident Evil other movies, or I'd rather go on and watch a number of Resident Evil video games besides this show. And kind of expected that. Kind of like, I immediately didn't think that we were going to get something that was to be like, wow, like I'm so impressed with this show. Because it's just another thing that the people of Resident Evil and Netflix can just shove out. So, of course. So, maybe eventually somewhere down the road within other episodes, this show might get more interesting. But I'm stuck here just waiting for that to happen. So, with that said, within the first episode, we go on to have young Jade and young Billy with Albert driving into New Raccoon City. And so Jade is going on and mentioning how she hates it here, and she's texting that to her sister, and her sister is listening to headphones and just going, oh, okay, whatever. Like, I agree, kind of. So we go on and have both of them going into Raccoon City, and Jade is talking about how there's good-looking guys here at least, so maybe they should go on and introduce themselves. And Billy's like, no, like, not yet. So Albert is to be so heavily focused on work that he really doesn't care about his daughters. And so Albert is to go on and start asking his people that he's working with about Tijuana. And so Tijuana is to come up, and so he's like, okay, all right, like, I'll like, just kind of keep me posted about it. So the Umbrella Company is working on this drug called Joy. And Joy, of course, has certain side effects, and I guess nobody is to really be aware of how bad that they could really be. We also have to toss in that this show is done in 2022, so we do have Albert at one point talking about COVID. So making it seem that there is to be a show that seems more current with Resident Evil. So we go on and we have Albert, who is to want blood tests from his daughters because he wants to go on and consistently check whether or not his kids are infected or not. So we have Albert, who is to go on and give Billy so Albert is to go on and get Billy's blood sample, and then we of course have Jade, who's to give Albert her own, because she's like, man, like, I'm just so good at needles at this point that I can't wait till I get some heroin. And so Albert is starting to realize just how bad of a father he really is. And when both of the kids are really starting to struggle, they look to their dad, who is knee deep in his work, to the point to where Jade just gets really ticked off at her own father for not paying attention to them. So we have both Jade and we have both Billy, who go to school. And so Billy is to immediately go into this cafeteria where all of a sudden she is to be met by some girl. Some girl, of course, who is giving Billy crap. And because, of course, Billy is wearing the shirt that she's a vegan. And so this girl ends up telling Billy that's like, well, hey, like, when this world all turns to crap, the first people that we're going to eat is vegans. And so this girl just tackles Billy to the ground and starts pounding her. And so they end up separating these girls. And so eventually, when Billy walks off with Jade, Jade is wanting Billy to get even with this girl and want to fight back. So when Billy is to make her way home, that's of course when Jade gets upset with her father for not stepping in and being a good dad, when obviously Billy is going through some hard times. So Jade is telling Billy to go on and punch this girl in the chest. And so Billy meets up with this girl again, and this girl is eating some burrito. And so Billy's trying to say something nice to this girl, and this girl just smushes this burrito into Billy's face. And again, it seems like there's almost going to be a confrontation, and so Billy tries to walk away, and Jade tells this girl that she's an effing bitch and walks off. So now it finally gets to a point where a lot of these kids are wearing these raccoon mascot masks. And so when the girl who was bullying Billy is in this bathroom stall, we then all of a sudden have Jade, who is wearing this raccoon mascot, and hurting this girl who is bullying Billy. And then come to find out, when Billy was to make it back to her locker, we have this teacher there who is wanting to open up Billy's locker. Come to find out that this mascot mask is within her locker. So this woman ends up pulling Billy and this girl who is getting bullied to her office. And so we have, of course, both of their parents who end up showing up. So Albert, who is kind of a neglectful father, is looking at this other dad who was to go on and threaten Billy. So when Albert goes in there and realizes how thin the walls are, and he hears that this guy is threatening his daughter, Albert is to go on and pull the power play. So Albert goes and talks to this guy. He's like, hey, like, what do you do for a job for the Umbrella Corporation? And so he ends up saying what his job is, and he's like, how many people can do your job? Thousands of people? 10,000 people? Now, how many people can go on, and this is Albert here, how many people can do my job? Me. One person. So if I were to go on and tell the Umbrella Corporation that I want to quit, or else you lose your job, how do you think that they're going to react? Are they going to let me go? Are they going to fire you? How is that going to work? But not only that, I can tell them to not only fire you, but then blacklist you so that way you never go on and get another tech job ever again anywhere. No one will hire you. And I was like, dang, Albert, you're really just putting your, just stick on the table, so to speak. Just, pah! Like, yeah, that's me. And so I'm like, dang, Albert. Fuck yeah. My bad for cussing. But so Albert is to see this guy starting to quiver. He's like, "Oh, okay, well, like, honey, apologize to this girl." So she's like, "Well, sorry." And Albert's like, "No, mean it." So I'm like, "Dang, Albert, yeah." So after that moment, we have Albert who's talking to Billy, and he's like, "Hey, like, you want to come to my job and have lunch with me soon?" And Billy's like, "Yeah, of course I would." And he's like, "Good, we'll have lunch." So I'm like, I love Albert during this whole scene. That was pretty cool. And so we go on and we have, and I'm really focusing on a lot of the past stuff, so that we can kind of go on and then tell the future stuff because it really doesn't make a huge difference anyways. Yeah, let's start to tell some of the future stuff. Let's do that right now, considering we're at a pinpoint here. So we have Jade, who is to have this certain camp. And so she has this bunny with a little driblet of blood on it. And so all of a sudden, a bunch of these T-virus zombies are approaching this bunny and can't find where their food source is. And so it seems that Jade is like, okay, like, it seems like they've learned something here. And so we also had Jade, before she was to go out for the day, was to do this satellite call to her husband and her daughter, because her daughter today is having a birthday. And so I guess since this girl has nothing better to do, she's already reading like Shakespeare. At this girl's age, like, she must be like a freaking genius. But so this girl is going on reading Shakespeare, and we then go on and have Jade, who's talking to her husband. I think it's Batron, and she's saying, "Oh my god, like, I missed the whole like other phase of her going on and reading other things." And Batron or Batra is just like, "Well, yeah, like, sorry, like, when you're not here, like, she just picks things up." So really, there's nothing, of course, that Jade can do but just to have to be fine about this. So Jade then goes on to do this whole experiment with this bunny, and then she ends up cutting her arm, and is to realize that these zombies are going to start chasing after her. So Jade starts running. Jade starts running to eventually make her way to this spot where she can hit this button, and all of a sudden all these poles are now bursting into flame, and all these zombies are to die around her, to where one of these zombies gets pretty close to her but then falls over. Then after this whole pole system burns into flame, then it is to kind of spray down this like fire deterrent kind of thing So that way, like, it kind of sprays down this kind of this kind of spray, so that way, uh, like, things will go back to normal. So Jade, all of a sudden, after running away from these zombies, then all of a sudden has this giant centipede that comes from out of the ground and is to start to attack starting to attack Jade, which I'm like, man, this is like random. What's going on in this world? And so all of a sudden we had this massive giant centipede, which I'm like, I didn't know like we'd have these wild bugs and stuff like that, but I guess it makes sense when we have these like dogs and whatever, but I'm like, just whatever you want to do, Resident Evil. So Resident Evil has this massive centipede that of course Jade is being attacked by. And so eventually we have a number of these kind of freedom fighter like types that are to be commanded by Tate. And so they go on and start blasting away on this giant centipede. And so they end up rescuing Jade, and they kind of look at her, and the one doctor guy, is mentioning that she might have internal bleeding, or she might just be knocked out. Like, we'll have to kind of assess, and we'll have to bring her with us. So Jade ends up getting taken along with these guys, and come to find out, Jade is to be a most wanted person via the Umbrella Corporation. And so Tate and his people had went on to call the Umbrella Corporation on Jade here to have her be collected in hope that this Umbrella Corporation would then want to turn around and want to give them safe passage. Because eventually when Tate is to show Jade around, Jade is thinking like, oh, well, I can just leave this area and I'll be like free from zombies. And Tate's like, yeah, that's not really the case. Because of how much noise that they have gone on and done, and eventually how like their scent may eventually lead a number of zombies here, Tate is to have this road flare and throw it out to eventually have Jade realize that there is a number of zombies, as far as the eye can see, all around this this headquarters that they are at. So eventually Tate is to let Jade know that the Umbrella Corporation is coming. And so when Baxter arrives with the Umbrella Corporation, they start killing off every single person that is to be here. And so now Jade is to have to go on and run off and figure out a way to escape from all this. And then we end up getting into the second episode. So finishing up any little details going on from this first episode, we have young Billy, who goes on to the Umbrella Corporation, and she ends up getting access via her voice and so on and so forth. So Billy goes into the Umbrella Corporation to see this little like teddy bear like thing that I guess is to be the possible spokesperson for Joy, the drug that they're putting together. And we also have Albert, who is to see this commercial and everything like that, that it's just gonna be this like little juice container. And we of course have Albert that's like, no, like this hasn't been fully tested yet, there's still side effects to be worried about. So we have Billy that goes on into the Umbrella Corporation, is waiting for her father, and it's all of a sudden see that there's a number of bunnies that I guess are possibly being tested on something. And Billy's like, oh my god, like, I hate the fact that Umbrella Corporation was to say they weren't testing on animals, Now all of a sudden they're testing on animals. What the heck? So we now have Billy that is to go to lunch with her father. And so when Billy comes home and talks to Jade, Jade is to apologize for what she had done with Billy's bully. And Billy is to go on and say, like, well, then you owe me one. And so how you're going to owe me one is we're going to sneak into the Umbrella Corporation and we're going to try to free these animals because it's not right what they're doing to them if they're going to test these animals. But what they really end up doing is they end up just taking a bunch of pictures and photos of all these animals at this environment, and they don't set them free. Well, with the exclusion of one by accident. So Jade and Billy go off to sneak in to this headquarters because they record the sound of their father's voice and they get in. So we have Billy and we have Jade. Billy is taking all these photos and then eventually is to open this case thinking that it's another animal in there. All of a sudden she realizes that it's a T-virus dog and it's a zombie dog. So they both run completely trying to get out of this facility, and what ends up happening is while this dog is consistently chasing them around, we have the dog who ends up biting into Billy's shoulder. So Albert, who is to find out what is going on, is to rush into the facility and is to go on and try to quickly bandage up his daughter and tell them to get out of here. And we have Albert that is scrambling all the cameras and all of the data to then have him put blood all over his clothes and say that he was here when all of this happened. So we have Evelyn Marcus that arrives here and is talking to Albert about what had all happened. And so Albert is to go on and say that I guess there was a number of people that tried to break in and they erased all the data. And so Evelyn's like, well, like, this is going to be a pain in the butt. And Albert's like, well, yeah, but, like, we have all of our research, like, backed up somewhere. And Evelyn's like, well, yeah, but still, like, to try to figure out who is the one who is to try to break in and do all this investigation. So, come to find out, Evelyn's wife was to also make her way into talking to Evelyn to eventually be upset with Evelyn for really not telling her everything. And it seems that Evelyn's wife has had enough because it seems that Evelyn was previously in Tokyo. Now she's here. And so we have Evelyn's wife that is just like, man, we've traveled all the world to get to this point, and like now you're hiding things from me. And so she gets so upset that she just walks off. So we have Albert in the next episode, because let's just kind of get to the second episode part. Because we've kind of gone on and covered most of this first episode. So we now into the second episode are to question whether or not that Billy is going to get infected and going to become a zombie. So patient zero, basically, as far as the human part of things are concerned. So so I'm trying to, alright, I needed to cover some casting basis. So, in the next episode, or between episode 1 and episode 2, so, we go and we have Albert who is checking on Billy as Billy is on this couch, and like they haven't really gone on to look into her wounds. Albert looks at her wounds and is to have to forcibly sew her up. And so Jade is telling Albert, it's like, well, hey, like, why aren't we going on and bringing her to a hospital? And Albert is telling her that it's like, we can't do that. If we go on and we do that, we'll be arrested and you guys will go to jail and probably so will I. So it's better that we are to just kind of take care of this at home. So we have Albert that is taking a blood sample of Billy to test whether or not that Billy is infected or not. So Albert takes Billy's blood sample and then puts it into a rat in hopes that the rat will turn out fine. So Jade is to go off while she's supposedly going to school, and she's trying to connect to a number of people, trying to find out the real truth about what's really going on in Umbrella Academy, or Umbrella Academy, Umbrella Corporation. I've been watching too much Umbrella Academy from when I would barely ever watch that show. So we have Jade go on and meet with a hacker. I believe his name is Simon, and eventually that hacker would go on and find out all this information about things that would say words like cannibalism and a bunch of other stuff. And so Jade is like, oh my god, like this is some real potential stuff here. So Jade is to go and seek out a guy named Angel Rubio, and she is to find out what is possibly really going on with the Umbrella Corporation. And so we have that going on. We also have Billy, who is to go on and not feel so great. So she ends up barfing into this toilet, and then is to see her dog and want to take her dog out to potty. And while Billy is taking her dog out, all of a sudden her dog no longer likes her. If anything, he hates her, but she still brings him out anyways. This dog continues to try to run away from his own owner, or her own owner. And so all of a sudden, when some guy is to grab this dog because it's running away from its own owner, he picks it up and is to ask this girl, like, do you really own this dog? Because it seems like this dog does not like you. And Billy's like, no, like, this dog likes me, believe me. And so every time that Billy tries to grab the dog, the dog starts to, like, and just starts growling at her and trying to bite her. So the dog is like, you know what, I'm just going to bring this to, like, the Humane Society, or I'm going to bring this to, like, the place where all the pets go, and eventually you'll be able to pick this dog up if you really and truly are the owner. So eventually what happens is Billy does eventually get the dog back because Billy punches this guy. He falls over and Billy gets the dog back and goes back home. And so all of a sudden, Billy is now to start bleeding from her mouth, and Billy is to start to be a little bit more aggressive, making us assume that eventually she'll probably turn zombie soon. Maybe. So we now have Future Jade. Future Jade is going on to eventually make her way to this city to talk to a woman named Melinda, who has a guy that can teleport people and or transport people secretly. So when Jade talks to Melinda and asking where is Barry, come to find out Jade is to find Barry in this bathroom, cuffed to this this part of the bathroom because he is now turned into a zombie. And so Melinda is to say the last time that Barry was to have gone on and done a transport, I guess he ended up getting sick and he ended up turning into a zombie. So we, of course, have Jade, who is to ask Melinda after seeing all of her cats, and Melinda doesn't even know which cat is which. Jade asks Melinda, it's like, well, hey, like, does this guy have any information where he writes down where he goes to send people? And Melinda's like, well, yeah, he has a pocketbook. And Melinda's like, pocketbook? Where does he have this pocketbook? And Melinda's like, well, of course it's in his pocket. So Jade now has to go and put on all this, like, this helmet and all of this this equipment and stuff to then go on and try and get this pocketbook away from this guy. And so somehow Jade is to be able to go on and get this pocketbook, but also Barry ends up getting free from probably like snapping his own like fingers, or like his hand was really just kind of like barely in this cuffed thing because he kept pulling on it after so long. So Barry starts sacking Melinda, and Jade has to go on and save Melinda's life by putting a broken wooden piece of the stick through Barry's head and kills him. And so Melinda's like, oh my god, why did you do that? And Jade's like, seriously? Like, I just saved your life. So Jade gets the pocketbook and then is to tell Melinda that the fact that this woman was to go on and put so many like dead cats in this shower is just like disgusting, and she walks off. When Jade was to also go on and meet with Melinda, Jade is to make a call to her lover, to her husband, and Batra is to go on and tell Jade that she should probably go on and head to a place where there is possibly going to be the Brotherhood there. And Jade is to go on and be like, seriously? Like, you would rather have me go on and be with the Brotherhood than... And Batra is like, well, yeah, like, anywhere that it's not the Umbrella Corporation, you need to just be safe. So we have Jade that goes on to this bar that eventually she is to try and barter to get this transport. So she ends up giving up her own wedding ring, and the guy ends up saying that's not enough. And so Jade ends up stealing this bottle of alcohol to give to this guy to grab his chip, and then is to trade this chip so that way she can go on and have this transport. So Jade then is to go on. Oh, we have a whole nother story also here that I forgot about. So before Jade was to make it to Melinda, we have the whole aftermath of the whole Baxter thing. So Jade was to go on and be with Baxter with all these swarms of zombies around her, and all of the Umbrella Corporation were blasting away trying to save Jade because they wanted to keep her alive. And Baxter is also to tell Jade about her sister. And so Jade then goes on and eventually is to see one guy that isn't with the Umbrella Corporation that is crazily driving off trying to escape, and Jade jumps on top of this vehicle and they drive off together. And so we go on and we have this guy who drives off to the point of Jade being fearful that she's going to get skewered by these certain metal pieces. So this guy ends up stopping this car and is to try to tell Jade to get away from him because she's wanted by the Umbrella Corporation. And so Jade is like, well, hey, if we can just go on and work together here. But then all of a sudden, these zombies start falling out of the sky, figuratively speaking, but almost literally. And they end up starting attacking this guy. Jade scrambles to get back in his car and tries to drive away from all of these zombies. So that's eventually when she makes her way into this town to talk to Melinda. God, I think there's also another moment here where I'm kind of spacing out about. Uh, we have Baxter, who is to go on and talk to Melinda, and so Melinda is to go on and tell Baxter where of course that Jade is heading, and so Baxter is like, good, because I want to go on and be able to get out of your hair, as he goes on and plucks a hair from his mouth that is obviously from any number of these cats, because Melinda has put together this oatmeal cookie. And Baxter is like, well, yeah, like, isn't it great to go on and instead of having like something chocolatey into a cookie, instead you have a raisin. Yeah, that's great. So Baxter, I guess, is to go on and somewhere in this episode is to try to sabotage Jade from getting her way out of here. And so, but we don't actually get to see that. We just kind of see Jade, who's going on to this transport, which I'm sure she will not be able to get into. So, with that said, that does go and technically cover most of this episode, so I think I'm going to go on and finally just get out of here. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I did forget about, because I'm sure there probably is. I think there's probably another scene here, possibly with Albert and Evelyn, where they start to talk about things, like Albert and Evelyn talk about Tijuana, and Albert is to mention to Evelyn about like how Joy isn't ready yet, and there's too many side effects, and yada yada yada. And also it seems that both Billy and Jade were to find a number of videos about Tijuana, because they could easily break into their father's Umbrella Corporation access thing, because of course he always has the same access of Spock 21 or something like that. And so it's kind of easy to figure out their dad's password, because I guess he's a Spock fan. So, other than that, let me know in the comments below what you felt about Resident Evil. Maybe I'm being too harsh about this show. But other than that, I think I'm just going to get out of here so I can go on and maybe finish up my videos for the day. Again, just kind of let me know about the Resident Evil show. If you liked it, if you hated it, if you were in the exact same camp as I am, or you're just kind of feeling that this is very vanilla, or just, it's just like, it's not what you were expecting. I can understand that. Or a lot of people are like, oh no, this like blew away my expectations. I was thinking this was going to be a much cheaper show, because people could have that kind of feeling. But yeah, like I just want one really good Resident Evil story instead of two different ones that I don't really care about. Because, man, there is so many possibilities within a video game to give you a really good story, and then you turn around in a movie or a show, and it's just really, this is what you're gonna give me? How does that happen? How do you f up Resident Evil? It does not make sense to me that you can go on and f that up. It just, anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, buddy. Bye, buddy.